Yeah, 6
Got it.
degrees where you are.
Well, it's warmer now. I turned the heater on about an hour ago, so
I did
it's
wonder what weather is like where you are this time of year. Like, because is it like Australia where it's like backwards in seasons? I don't know.
no. So here in Japan, it's the same as you. We're in the northern hemisphere, so
Right.
um,
Geography.
so it's the same, but it's like in Tokyo. Like people that don't live in Tokyo say that Tokyo weather's pretty damn good. It's not that cold. Um, but for me, it's cold, and it's but it has sunny afternoons. So
Okay.
between 11 and 2, it's really pleasant. You know, it's sunny. It's kind of warm in the
Yeah.
sun, but it's still only like 12 degrees. But before 11 and kind of after 2, it starts to chill. You know, it's chilly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, you look cozy anyway. You're in your big jumper. I've got a cardigan to the side of me just in case I get cold, but yeah, we should be all right. That's what a cup of tea's for. Welcome to the Concrete Podcast.
Thank you.
Say it. I mean,
Thank you for having me.
you know, I'm like, this is relaxed as anything. This is how I do a podcast. Everyone else structures there, and I'm like, nah, we're just gonna dive straight into it. We'll start recording and we'll see where it takes us. But welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you. I think I was doing the math beforehand, and I think you're the furthest away any guest has been from me geographically than anyone else I've had on. I had one from Vancouver recently, who's like 4,000 miles the other way.
Uh-huh.
And you're about 5,000 something miles the other way. So you're just
Wow.
geographically further away. So I need to interview someone in Australia, and then I'll have beaten
Hawaii. Hawaii would.
Yeah.
Would Hawaii? Hawaii would almost be opposite, then, wouldn't it?
I don't quite know. I'm not very good at geography. Let me do a quick Google. Whilst I do a quick Google, I'm terrible at introducing my guests. So would you please introduce yourself, Craig? Who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm Craig, as we've established. I live in Tokyo. Now I'm originally from Australia. I have like a zine review handle on Instagram where I've ran for since about 2018 or something like that, just making video reviews. I think it was when Instagram started the 60-second video thing. And I just that's kind of what I do. I review zines. I make zines. I chat with people about zines on YouTube with another friend, a Canadian actually, who's not in Vancouver but somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where they live. We've never met face to face. We only know each other online, so we just chat with zinesters about their art.
It's not a bad thing to do. I did just Google. Hawaii is 6,980 miles away. So yeah, I'm gonna find someone in Hawaii. There's got to be zines somewhere in Hawaii, right?
There is actually. Yeah, there is. This. I think someone was going to send me one from there or something, and it never turned up. But there would be, surely. The zines everywhere.
Yeah, I mean that's how I know you from kind of the internet, as we kind of say. I mean, I got into zines in 2017 around that time, and started making zines. And I think you were one of the first people I found doing reviews, like who was active, because I find a lot of people do it for a little bit and then they dapper off or they become something else. Whereas you were very consistently just like, and I liked because your reviews are very poppy in the sense that they do last like 60 seconds. You get a few bits of information and your opinion on it, and you're like, yeah, cool, move on. I'm going to move on to the next thing. I was like, I like that. But you've been doing that since you started, like.
Well, yes, I've been doing that since 2016, but I originally heard about zines like 20 years ago, maybe more, when I was like, I heard 1997, 98. I was in a punk band and I was kind of introduced to zines then, but I never got into them that much. I wasn't really confident with my art. I wanted to kind of write. I felt like but I had no structure. I had my spelling was atrocious. My grammar was non-existent, and I didn't know what I wanted to write. So I kind of didn't really get into them. They didn't really take hold. But yeah, 2016 or something like that. I kind of decided to revisit them. So about the same kind of time.
I feel like I need to ask, what was the name of your band? Because that seems like an
It was
important
called
question.
Mondo Pest.
Mondo Pest. I like that. I could see
It
that
was,
being a punk band.
we were, yeah. We were, we were very raw. But we tried to be like, it was 1997, so we tried to be like Green Day kind of thing, Screeching
Okay.
Weasel, like kind of the older side of Green Day, like kind of the cast kind of stuff, but with a bit of Ramones and the Clash kind of thrown in there. But we've got a recording on Spotify or something, but it's absolute trash. You could.
I feel like I'm very lucky that the bands I was in when I was a teenager, we never recorded anything we did. I don't think there's a single record. I was in bands from being about 16 through to about 18, and it was just garage bands with friends.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that stage of technology where you'd still have had to have some level of aptitude to be able to record something which would play back. And it was just like, yeah, I'm very happy that none of those recordings ever made it.
What did you play?
So weirdly, I played lead guitar and singing, despite having very little talent in both. It was just so we were a three-piece. I've been in three pieces, and in each one I played guitar and I sang. I can barely play rhythm guitar, and I can barely sing, but I'm the only one of my friends who could do both at the same time. And that became the key point of, we could find a bassist and we could find a drummer, and Graham can do something with his mouth and something with his hands. We'll get through it. How about yourself? What's your position in a band?
I played drums.
Okay, I can see that.
And I played drums because they were like kind of the easiest thing, because I've got no music ability at all, and I couldn't even contemplate trying to like move fingers and this one at the same time. And drums is just arms and some feet, and that's kind of it. Like, it's
just hit a few things.
At the time, they were easy.
I mean, I guess I think there was a saving grace in the sense of, I was in metal bands, and it was like, as long as you apply a large amount of distortion, nobody will care. Doesn't really matter what you play. Like, hit a few power chords, look like you're enjoying yourself, and then you'll get yourself through it. It's interesting that you.
Yeah, I was.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, yeah, ours was punk, so it was.
Yeah.
You know, if you can keep a 4/4 beat and like speed up, like do a quick 2/4 or something, you're fine. It's that was it.
I remember seeing a punk band during uni who they'd followed on from quite a traditional metal band, kind of like a battle of the bands sort of thing. And the band before them had played 2 tracks, and it had taken them, 8 or so minutes. And the punk band came on and played like 10 songs in that space of time, and they were like, "You're gonna have to really pay attention because all of our songs are really fucking short." Just kidding. I like that. I like that you can just bunch that many songs into that gap. It's interesting.
Yeah, we had a set, like a 20-minute set of like 10 songs, and 20, like, it was maybe like 15 minutes, 15 songs or something, and it was like 10-15 minute set or something. It was just 15-20 minute set, and it was just like, we play 4 and then we take a short like kind of break, like chat to the audience, like take a drink of water, and then we play the next 4. It was just kind of Ramon style. They used to play like a group of songs, and they take a break and they go, "What did we rock?" And then into the next. So we copied that.
It's a beautiful way of doing it. It's interesting that you come from that background, and now you do very like pithy short reviews as well. If you don't lose that style.
No, no. And I kind of those short reviews come out of kind of my thought behind what other people were doing with reviews before I kind of started. Because I like a lot of people do reviews on blogs and things like that, and of course in zines. And I found like the zine world, a lot of the zine world was on Instagram. So I didn't want them to leave Instagram because nobody wants to leave that app. Like especially at that time, that mentality was like they're on that app to surf that app. So I was like, why don't I just make the review here? And like they just introduced this 60-second video, and I was like, I could just talk about the zine and just like film it in one shot and upload it, and people don't have to leave. They just, and then the zinester can share it, and it's this kind of, they have the review already on this app that they're promoting on. So kind of my mentality behind it.
Straight to the point. I think it's effective, especially as you say, kind of like it's a hard line to tread for a lot of zine makers of where you put your stuff. And we find so many people who are spread over so many apps and so many storefronts, and it does become that battle of just like, oh yeah, cool, I've got it on Facebook, but nobody sees it, so I'm going to push it on here, and I got it on here, and nobody sees it. And you just end up in a like mass cycle of regurgitating your own content in a way.
Yeah. And then sometimes like your fans or people who like your stuff will also see it on different platforms, and you kind of like, I don't want to see it on all these platforms, but I understand that you're doing that. But it's like, I don't need to see this post on Facebook because I saw it on Instagram or something like that, or on Twitter. Or
yeah, I dread being friends with me because all I post is work. Like my Instagram is just the work I'm doing or whatever I'm up to, which I then automatically share to Facebook again on a page, and then back to my friends who are on Facebook. Like, yeah, I'm just bombarding you. I guarantee the majority of my friends have muted me on at least one of those apps because it's just too much. It's too much. I'm just trying to beat the algorithm.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like that. Yeah, I'm a little bit like that. I just, like, I was on Twitter for a while, kind of within the Tokyo community, and because it's kind of big here. It's kind of it got big after the earthquake in like 2011. It was like the only way to communicate because the telephones were down, so it became a big communication device. And with this like the tsunami kind of thing. So it's still kind of relatively big, and it was a big community. So yeah, I got stuck onto that for a while, and then now I just, when I post on Twitter, it's just like I'm selling this, or watch this video or something like that. There's not a lot of me on there.
I think Twitter is one of the few platforms where I'm less promoty on Twitter. I think I'm more promoting on Instagram, on Facebook, because I kind of abandoned Facebook, and I just went to a point of I'll just send products there. I don't want anything else there. I'll just send products there. Whereas Twitter, I'm still kind of just like, this is just whatever pops into my head for the day. I don't understand why you're following me, so here's a random thought for the day.
Yeah, I'm sometimes like that, but maybe more recently I'm a little bit like that now. Like I'll just share a photo that happened yesterday or something, and like because personally I don't want to be on all of these apps all the time. Like I want to, like everybody, I want to step away from my phone, but I also like friendship and community and things like that. So it's kind of a double, a little bit bitter and a little bit sweet kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of that. I mean, I guess that's why. I think the zine community has seen kind of like a bit of a rise, because for most people it is a paper function. It is something which takes you away from a screen, because you sit down and you go, all right, cool, I'm going to make something, and you do something, cut and paste, and and put it all together? Because like, so your zines you made are mainly per zines, right? From what I remember.
Pretty much, yeah. I've just recently made. I'm about to put a new one out this week, and I just sort of got back into making them, but
Hmm.
1 or 2 years ago. Yeah, just all per zines. Lived stories kind of stuff. Like, yeah, basically per.
Why per zines? I'm curious because I shy away from per zines.
Um, I don't know. It's actually a perzine was kind of the first zine I come across. Um, I'm a big fan of this zinester that's been doing it since the '80s, called Comet Bus. American guy, he's kind of from Berkeley, kind of come out of the Green Day scene, same kind of area, and well, the same area. They were friends basically, and he's there was a period where he's were kind of pre close to perzines. Maybe they weren't 100% true stories, but I really resonated with his style of writing, and that's what made me want to write, or that's what gave me permission to write. Like, it was like, yeah, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. That was my connection to writing, and I think that's kind of his zines have kind of changed over the years, and he's been doing it for 40 years, so he's probably got all different types. But yeah, I don't know. That's what I think about. I think about personal stuff. I think about how about my life, or what other people's. I'm one of those, like many people, a people watcher, and I'm kind of watching how people act in situations and what they're doing, and then sometimes my imagination goes, oh, maybe they're doing this, and maybe they're doing. So it's even a lot of my stories are really set in real life or
Mhm.
truth. And then sometimes I kind of just add a bit of sugar and cardamom and salt and just kind of spice it up.
A little bit to make it just a little sweeter, or a little more sour.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think it's well, yeah, you have to just kind of embellish this little part, and extend the days to make it sound longer or something, or more, I don't know, more difficult to overcome or something like that. So there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I think that's the beauty of writing. It allows us to do that. I think there's a very strange idea, or there's a very strange idea I have with people who are very restrictive of language, and they're very restrictive of certain ways to write. There's a way to write. There's a correct way to write.
Mhm.
Especially in the UK, you get a lot of the Queen's English and all those kinds of
Yeah.
things. And when you sit and consider it, you're like, well, if it takes away from the emotion you're putting into the writing, if writing in that manner removes that emotion, then that's wrong. That you should
Yeah.
write in the way which embellishes it, the way which gives the reader that sense of what you're reading. So when you're reading it, you're like, yeah, actually, no, I understand it. I understand this character more because it's written in a way which is more towards that character, or thematically involved within it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Though, yeah, as I say, I
Yeah. Well, the
kind of
style of writing.
sorry,
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the style of writing kind of pulls you in. Like, if
Yeah.
it is not classic style, it's like you have to. There's a reason behind that. The writer hasn't, especially if you're reading a published book. It's written in that style because the writer wants you to read in that style. They could have wrote in a classier style or a more traditional style, but that's the setting you've got,
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
I think more people should use words like that, because I think writing, because there is so many rules to writing, like even basic rules, capital letters, full stops, all that kind of nonsense. I think it should be used in more abstract ways, like paint would be. There's rules to
Hmm.
paint. You know what
Hmm.
rules you can mix paints in certain colors, mix to make certain colors. But at some point, you're going to sit there and go, I should mix red and blue and make a really crap purple because that would work for this. And I feel like, yeah, if putting a capital letter in the middle of a word helps the story by giving you like a visual indication of something gone awry, then why not do that and just throw that into the story? There's not enough of that for my personal.
I don't think there is. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there is, or how much of that there actually is. Like, there's probably a lot I'm not aware of, but that is really interesting. Like that's I think sometimes you see it, but not often.
There's a book. Weirdly, I discussed this author on the last podcast I recorded. Chuck Palahniuk, the author of Fight Club and all many other books, has a book called Survivor. I don't know if you read it, which is essentially it's a really interesting story. The book is printed backwards, so it's printed, covers on the right side, back covers on the right side, and when you open it, you read the first page, and the first page is the last page. And if you were to read the book from back to front, it would make complete sense as a story, but it's not intended to be read back to front. It's meant to be that every page you finish, you are then going back a page in the story, and so the sentences don't follow on at the start of every single page. So it's the most confusing thing to read as you're going through, because you're always a page behind. And it's told that way because it's told from the perspective of a black box on a plane crash. So you're reading the black box and you're reading it backwards. So if you read it back to front, you will get a perfect view of the story. But you're not. You're looking at it from layer upon layer of a black box. And I read it once, and I read it as intended from the back to front. I was like, this is fantastic. I am so confused, but that's good. And some people.
It sounds amazing.
It
sounds amazing.
It's a great little book, and it is one of those things of, if you want to read it traditionally, you can do. You just read the book backwards, and it makes perfect sense because it's a book, written in the right way. But you're meant to read it back to front.
Wow,
it's a missed opportunity. I feel that a lot of people have with writing and books is you're handing someone off a tome, an object. Why not use the physicality of that object to add to whatever you're doing while you're doing it?
Yeah.
Which I think is why I like zines, because it's something people do in zines.
Yeah, it's kind of a place to play, isn't it? It's usually relatively inexpensive, and it's a place where you can really play and just do whatever you want. There's no rules. There's no rules.
Well, depending on who you talk to in the zine community.
Yeah, I guess so. I can't stop thinking about that book. That is so cool. That is
yeah.
I'm gonna have to. No,
interesting.
Two ways about it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's.
It's a mix. It's a strange mix. But I think it's interesting you mentioned the whole idea of kind of people watching and retelling stories you see around you. I think there's almost like an inherentness of creators to people watch, and I don't know if you'd agree. It seems like there's people who make things in any regard, whether it be music, writing, or whatever. We almost do it naturally, and I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I don't really know why, but I think it's because a lot of people are really we're interested in other people's perspective and how other people act and think in maybe the same situation you're in or different situations. And because I think we kind of think a lot about how we're acting or what we're doing, and you kind of like, oh, that was a bit weird. Like if you have a weird interaction with a shop assistant, you're like, oh, that was a bit weird. And then like when you go to maybe the next shop, you're like, kind of, if you're a person behind in the line, you're watching what the other person's doing. And you're like, how are they interacting? And then, but yeah, I don't like, it isn't, it's something a lot of creators are really interested in, whether it's you want to work out the position someone's standing, so you can maybe paint someone doing that, or if it's to get like to take a photography, take a photo or something like that.
Just naturally
I
do
don't
it.
know.
I don't know. It's almost creepy, like the level at which we do it, though, because we
Oh,
just retain information. Like,
I know. Like I know. I kind of do it to a creepy level too.
I can't remember
Okay,
what I did
I will.
yesterday, but I can tell you details about people from months ago.
Yeah, so can I. I can. I've worked. I currently work as a coffee maker at the moment, and I've done also in the past. And if you order the same drink more than twice, and you might only come once a month, I will remember how you have your drink. If you have any sugar, if you don't, if like I used to work like 20, 21 years ago, or no, maybe not that long. A few years, like 15 to 20. I worked as a coffee maker in the city in Melbourne, and coffee is really big in Melbourne. It's popular like everywhere, and the cafe was right in the dead center of the city, and next door was a language school, an English learning language school. So at between 8:30, let's say 8:30 and 9:30, there was people coming to the office, to the CBD, to businessmen. There was teachers for the school next door. There was students from all around the world uh, for the school next door. So there would be groups of 20 people standing in front of me, and I had this window at the cafe, and could look out, and I would look at people's faces, and I'd go, okay, that's a hot chocolate, that's a latte with one sugar, that's a cappuccino. And I didn't know anybody's name, but I knew all of their drinks, and I would just make them. They wouldn't even have to say anything, and I would put it on the counter and say, $2.50, thanks, $3, thanks, and they'd just be like looking at me like, how do you? I just remember.
It's
It's
madness.
crazy.
I don't. It's kind of like, I don't know, like the idea of just like ignoring names for the rest of your life and just looking at people and be like, "That's a latte." So, did you speak to Jim? No. You mean flat white? Like, it's just.
Yeah. Well, faces I'm pretty good at too. Not just their drinks, but faces I'm pretty good at. And then if I can attach the name, I will eventually learn the name. But the name is like kind of pretty low on the rung. I'm kind of like, okay, what do they drink?
Yeah.
What's their face?
I'm terrible with names and place names, street names, anything like that. Just they drift out of my head. But if you were wearing an interesting coat that day, maybe I can probably tell you about the coat you were wearing, or you may have mentioned an idea to me, and my brain will have gone, oh, that's that person who thinks turtles are from space. I remember that, but I couldn't tell you what they're called for the life of me. I work with hundreds of people.
Yeah, I used to when I lived in the UK, I used to go into like Piccadilly Circus, and I'd just sit on the bench and just people watch for hours. And I had no friends. I had nothing to do. Maybe a book in my pocket, and I would just do just weird shit like that. Like just,
It's one of my
I
favorite.
want to see what's happening.
Yeah,
I want to.
people. I think it's quite a strange thing of when I go like on holiday somewhere or wherever. There'll be days where I do literally nothing but wander. Like I'm a big fan of walking wherever I'm going in a city. Like even London, it'll be most people will be like, oh, you just take the tube from such and such. I'm like, nah, I'll walk for an hour. It's an hour. The things I'll see on that walk will be
Yeah.
more interesting than what I'm going to see trapped in a tube underground. And
Yeah.
I'll just walk around. I'll just be watching people. I'll go sit in a park for like 2 hours through 3 hours, and I'm like, what did you do with your holiday that day? I was like, just chilled out in a park for a little while. Watch some Londoners because they're interesting as creatures.
Yeah, I used to go into the city. I lived in a couple of places when I lived in London, but I'd go into the city, and I don't remember the street names, but it used to have the big HMV on the main. It was kind of like a big main street. It was near, maybe it was Charing Cross Road that ran down to Trafalgar Square, I think.
Okay.
And then there was a big main main one. It made this big triangle anyway, and I used to just walk around this triangle, and I would just watch all these people shop. I'd watch people like groups of people like just like trying to pickpocket and shit like that, or like
Yeah.
take stuff out of people's bags. I'd watch them, the way they used to stuff the tissues up the bus ticket, where people would buy their bus tickets.
Yeah.
People would stuff tissues up there so they wouldn't get their change, and they'd get their ticket, and then they'd be like, "Oh, what the fuck?" And then like so they'd come back and they'd just pull out the tissue, and then all of the change would drop. And I just watch all of that shit happen. It used to be amazing. I used to love it. Or like I remember seeing two younger women like window shopping basically, and then like these maybe two or three dudes kind of wander past and then like notice, oh, maybe we could get something out of their bag, and they could kind of loiter, and I used to love watching that shit. God.
That's the stuff you want to see. Like, I'm not fussed about going to see, whatever's big or whatever's going on. I'm just curious about what people are doing in their day to day. Just, yeah. But as they say though, that's like the fourth location you've mentioned you've lived. You just lived everywhere.
Yeah, well, yeah. I grew up in Australia.
Right.
I went to Thailand for 2 weeks. Didn't live there. Lived in London for about a year and a half, and spent 2 months in Paris and a month in Italy in that sort of period. Visited San Francisco, Fiji for a holiday, Japan, and Taipei. But yeah, like that's maybe it. 9 places or something. I've lived in like 3 countries, I guess.
Just took up and was just like, you know what? I don't want to stay in the same place for for that long.
Well, I did it when I was young. I felt kind of like I don't really belong here in Australia. It was
Right.
like I want to try to find somewhere I feel comfortable living in. And my grandparents, my grandfather on my mother's side is from Isle of Man.
Okay.
So and then my father's side is maybe 2 or 3 generations, kind of British. We think we're not. It's not 100% sure, but
Everybody's kind of British. We were in too many places not to be.
yeah. It was yeah.
Mm.
It's a whole different street. Let's keep driving past that street.
It's the sort of subject of whenever I meet anyone of just kind of like, oh yeah, you're from such and such country. And in the back of my head, I'm just like, yeah, there's a chance we just did terrible things in your country, and I really hope it doesn't come up in this conversation. But
Actually, just to like stop and just look down that street, I will mention a podcast that I do listen to. It's called Stuff the British Stole.
Okay,
and
cool.
it's made by an Australian guy, and he kind of just looks at one object or something, and he kind of gives the history of it, and it's usually something a British person stole or something like that, or took from another country. So it's quite an interesting podcast, actually.
It's a strange, yeah. It's a strange burden to bear as a British person, to know you robbed the world. It's at times you feel kind of proud of it, because you're just like, yeah, we did do all of that, and now we have like a weird cockiness about it. But because we're British, we're extremely guilty about it at the same time.
Yeah.
So we just play it off and downplay ourselves for the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think that conversation that could just, it could go in so much. It's a crazy thing. Even my parents, my grandparents, my family history is from there,
Yeah.
moving to Australia, and then the whole kind of the history of that is just, it's phenomenal. It's just
it goes so long in any way, shape, or form when you start to pick apart histories of anywhere and where you connect to. I think it's a rabbit hole, but I think it comes back to that point of, I think that's almost inherently human to want to do that a little bit, regardless of where you come from, the good or the bad or the ugly. When you look at your back and you go, okay, well, this is what I come from. There's a level of I need to know. Like, I almost don't care how bad it got. I need to know what happened, and I find it strange when you meet people who are like, no, we ignore that. You know, we're not gonna.
Yeah.
We're not gonna discuss
And
that.
I think there's certain types of people that need to, like, you know, like you say, there's people that just ignore, and there's some people that need to know, and because it's not taught, it's one of those things that isn't taught in schools, and no matter what kind of Western society you come from, America, Britain, you know, Australia, maybe even South Africa, it's there's so much unknown information that you have to dig. If you want to know, you have to dig, and it's actually really hard to dig if you're not I don't know, connected it to the right people, or living in the same, like, you know, I'm here in Japan now, and in the last couple of years I've really wanted to understand more of that history of
Yeah.
the invasion of Australia, and it's kind of difficult. There's a little bit of stuff on the internet, and well, there's kind of a lot of stuff on the internet, but it's a lot of it is general stuff.
Yeah.
To really find the nuts and bolts, it's kind of, you kind of have to be there and go to some place where there's kind of an archive, and or visit some of the communities or something like that, where like where you can talk to, you know, indigenous people and hear more of kind of the background. So it's been difficult living here and wanting to find out more.
Definitely, and I think especially when you're in a country and that country doesn't necessarily want you to know, or they don't want you to focus on that. You know, I mean, I think the UK is a great example of that. We have, you know, if you look at our current government, if they don't like looking at the bad stuff, they point to, you know, they'll point you to the victories, and they'll point you to the things which we won, so to speak, and they'll say, oh yeah, well, you know, we recognize the other stuff, but we don't talk about that. And then when you come from the outside and you say, well, no, we want to know about that, it's seen as a bit of like maybe a little bit of attack, because those are the things we put in archives, we put in vaults, and we push to the side, and it's hard to get that information, as you say. And I think you have to go again back to the people. You have to go to the ones who are willing to talk about those stories and willing to put that information out into the world in some format.
And I think, you know, it's, if you're talking about some sort of, like, especially indigenous communities, a lot of that isn't online, or it's very, because it's not popular, you kind of have to really try to really fucking search for it. Like, so it can be difficult if you're not living in the right area. It might not be another country. It might be just you live in a small town, and you just don't have the means. You know, it shouldn't be, but you know.
But it is. I'm curious then. I mean, you've got quite a history in terms of, you know, growing up in the, like, I guess the early 90s punk scene, and being involved in zines and bits and bobs like that. There was a term which reminded me the other day, because I completely forgot the term existed, and it was counterculture. And this whole idea of being part of the counterculture and being part of, you know, that revolutionary idea of just standing up for other things, and being that slightly underground level, of whether that even exists anymore, because the internet has made everything an amalgamation. I'm kind of curious what you think.
Well, I didn't really think of it in those terms in that kind of period. Like, it was just, I just knew I didn't fit in. Like, I kind of, you know, I think going back a little bit, I think I've lived in a couple of different places, because when I grew up, I actually moved a lot. I moved in the same town, but I moved, I don't know, between like being born and 18 years old, I lived in like 20 different houses.
Okay.
And so I kind of went to in that time, I went to a lot of different schools. I went to 5 different primary schools, and then I ended up at the same one for like my 5th move that I started at, kind of thing. I started and finished. I
Right.
bookended
Yeah.
at the same school, and a couple of different high schools. So I just never really fit in. So I didn't really feel like I needed to rebel or counterculture against it. And it's like, it was just like, where is people talking about the things that I have experienced or something? And I think that's kind of how I kind of stumbled across punk, and I was kind of into skateboarding at that time. I
Mhm.
skateboarded all through my teens. So I don't know, in skateboarding there's a lot of degenerates, and we kind of and like that usually has different musical types. There was, people into death metal, and like they're into punk and stuff like that, and also kind of into rap, like in the kind of the 90s kind of genres of these.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I guess that's kind of, I just fitted into it, and maybe it has died counterculture. I don't know. It feels like we're all a lot more connected.
Yeah.
Like I sometimes I think, how did we how did we meet people before the internet?
I
And I guess.
that's a big question. I've had this with a few different artist friends. We've sat there and said to one another, right, consider the internet didn't exist and we were artists in the 80s. How in the world would you have got your work out to anybody? And all of us sat there and went, you know what? I don't know if I would have been able to, because like we're all, a few of us from small towns. We're not from big cities, so there wasn't a
Mhm.
huge music scene. There wasn't huge venues to go do things. You couldn't rent anything because there was no money. It was like, yeah, we just wouldn't. And now we've been given access to the world.
Yeah, I think it was just like if it was any good, it would make it somewhere. Like it
Mm,
might not make it, around the world, but if it was any good, it would make it somewhere. I guess, that's where zines and just even just general mail and bookstores played a big part in that. Like secondhand bookstores and things like that. They would uh like that's where people kind of went. Magazines, magazines used to be huge, and there was all different types. There wasn't just the rich ones that are available now. It
yeah.
was all different. So I think and also like maybe not on a global level, but on a national level, like bands would play, and sometimes there'd be like the diehard fans that would go to every gig, and they would maybe go into your town and go, "Oh, I also saw this band open up for them," and bands would take other local bands on tour. Like that's just how people kind of got out there, and a
It's
friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. And
it's one of those things where like I can't decide if it's better or worse, essentially, in our situation to be creating. Because I think like early on when people were making things, I think there was a level of you could work on things in the dark for quite a long time. You could be a
mm,
band or you could be an artist and you'd be working on things, and then you'd maybe have a friend or a couple of friends who do something similar to your style, and that would be a style which was gradually forming and gradually building, and then a whole community could grow that idea before it even met the public eye. Whereas
mhm,
now, if something gets even slightly popular, someone gets hold of it, it goes viral through one means or
mhm,
another, and suddenly it becomes a commodity. It becomes, like whatever. Like I think cottage core, which is on Instagram, is a huge example of this. It's just a style of fashion. Someone started dressing in a certain way and was like, yeah, yeah, I'm going to call it cottage core. And then someone else did it. And instantly, it was like thousands of people like, yeah, cottage core is a thing now. This is just the thing of the
mm,
week. And I'm like, that's really strange because you think like 90s, that would have been like one town one group of friends would have
Mm,
started dressing away. They would have gone to a gig or something a town over, and then they would have started in like, oh, have you seen
mm,
that band? I like that band. And it would gradually
mm,
build. And there'd be that opportunity for a baseline of this is how this works,
mm,
this is a community, this is what we're all about. And now that opportunity for a baseline just vanishes because you're either
mm.
nothing or you're something.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's better or worse. Like
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it kind of creates a homogenous kind of thing of it. Like, for example, so, like maybe in the 90s, something new. So like maybe, vegan hardcore kind of, shelter and minor threat. And, like you have like I don't know, what do you call it? Like just a group of friends, like, in an area, in a town.
yeah.
And like one friend will all of a sudden, or like the his cousin from the city will come and visit and be like, oh, check out this zine I found at the local record store, or CD shop.
Yeah.
And they would introduce, and you'd have this one interview with maybe Ian McKay from Minor Threat, and he would talk about veganism and straight edge, and that would be, and then they would that area would put their own slice on it, their own kind of twist on it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be, and then like that would kind of grow. But now, like you say, with kind of the spread of information, or the easy access of information, you can kind of get this and this and this, and you kind of have the whole picture, and not kind of this little corner of a photograph like you used to have. You'd be like,
Yeah.
what is this vegan straight edge, kind of stuff? What is this? And then you'd kind of have to try to make up the rest of the photo for,
Yeah.
between you and your friends, or you would have to search to fill in the photo. But
I think that's interesting.
I
Like you kind of just mentioned then, like the whole idea of different communities getting hold of something and putting their own slant on it. Like we saying, like with kind of the punk scene of like every area of every country had a different style of punk, and
mm,
same with like rap music did exactly the same thing. Depending on the city you were from, depending on the type of rap music you made, and that was the point. It had that, like we're saying, like that baseline to go, okay, it's going to spread gradually, and then by the time it gets big, it's going to be diverse in its own sense.
mm,
Whereas now, like, we'd be saying, you put something out, the guy who's thousands of miles away is going to see exactly the same thing as you, and they're going to post it online, so their difference isn't going to matter because someone else will adapt it, and that will spread so quickly and just engulf one another, which is kind of sad, I guess.
mm.
Maybe you have to try harder now.
Well, it's just different, isn't it? It's different. Like I think we you kind of have to, accept as this kind of becomes such it's just part of our lives now. It's just a different way of doing things. They probably had the same conversation when cars came out. People are like, oh, but we won't be able to catch the train and chat to people, and what, like, what, we're going to just drive by myself? Who am I going to talk to? How am I going to read the newspaper and drive at the same time? Like they probably went through the same, growing pains mentally that this kind of topic kind of produces as well. So
I love the idea of that, of someone just being like, wait, I can't read the paper at the same time. Like, this is the tragedy. The car is an absolute failure. No one will ever want to do it. If I can't smoke my pipe and drive at the same time, there is no point. I need to get from A to B.
a seatbelt. How am I supposed to put on a seatbelt and get out of the car? I want to be out of the car in seconds. Not.
It's
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Like I say, that I think it encourages. Like I said, I don't think I just said like I say too many times. I don't think there's a level of being angry about it. I think a lot of people get very angry about how things have changed, and like myself and you and anyone in the zine community, there is a level of us wanting to go, okay, well, we can still make paper things, and that is still a very individualistic act. And when I spoke to JL Corbett about zines, we wrote about how self-publishing is is still a revolutionary act. It's still one of these things of
Mm.
you're doing it yourself, you're putting it out yourself, and you control who it goes to on some level, and that's unique to you. And I think having access to large amounts of information, instantaneous access to information, forces you to try and find other ways to make it unique, and make it
Mm-hmm.
distinct to your town or your place, and say, okay, well, we have this huge thing, like next year tomatoes could be the viral hit of the year. Everyone's like, oh, we're into tomatoes now. Kids are eating tomatoes by the bucketful. But someone over
Tomato
there is like,
latte.
yeah, tomato latte. That guy's ordered tomato latte 2 times in a row. He's the tomato latte guy. And I think there's a level of you can kind of sit there and go, all right, well, that's our thing. But then a group of your friends will go, well, no, we're into tomatoes, but only, slightly green tomatoes. I like the slightly green. And then you suddenly got this niche within the tomato community. And you have to reach out and be like, no, we've got a large thing. Anyone can have a large thing. That's the thing now. But we can make something unique. Why?
Yeah.
Just because we can.
Mm.
There's got to be a level of you can do it to do it.
Yeah, I think I think also with zines, like making a zine, or if you've made a zine for like a number of years, it's kind of the same thing. So hang on. So let me sort of change. So if you want to make a zine about a topic,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, yeah, I know a lot about tomatoes, and you're like, okay, I know a lot about tomatoes, and you're like, and then you sit down and you make a zine. You make issue number 1, the tomato zine,
Yep.
and you're like, shit, I don't know anything else about tomatoes. And you're like, oh, everything I know is in this one zine. And then you're like, if I want to make issue number 2, I need to find out something else. Like, let's look at the vine of the tomato or the soil. How does the soil affect the growing of the tomato or the climate? Then all of a sudden, with a zine, especially as a vehicle, you kind of have to travel down this road of this tomato. Like the issue number 1 was the tomato. You know this thing, and
Yep.
and now, like I say, you've burnt out all of your information. So issue number 2, and you have to dig deeper. And then if you want to make issue number 3, you're going to go even deeper still. Then how often should you water a tomato plant? Like, can you overwater? Like, maybe you can. Can you underwater? Of course, you can underwater. They die. I've killed one spring of 2020. But it's I think, like zines become this kind of vehicle of, you've got all of this regular culture, this modern day culture, this tomato 2022 tomatoes. But then zines give you this, zines give you this vehicle to go, hang on, okay, let's look at this current culture, and let's dig a little bit deeper, and that can be written work, photography work, or painting or anything like that.
Definitely. I think zines, they encourage you to look a little more. I guess maybe this is the point of zines and people like ourselves who do people watch, who do look a little deeper, just naturally, because that's what we do. We look at a cup and we go, oh, okay, it's a cup. I want to know more about it. I want to know where it came from, what's inside of it. And some people will look at a cup and be like, it's a cup, don't really care about it. And then, as soon as you write something down about it, you're piquing their interest because you wrote about this cup. Why did you write about this cup? There can't be that much to say, and suddenly you've published 5 issues about this singular cup. And so,
different cups, about different makes of cups, and beautiful designs of cups, and different handles. And like this one has very, very, just a normal kind of handle, but sometimes you get elaborate handles, comfortable handles.
Exactly. I mean, what's mine? I guess mine's not a cup; it's a mug, technically, which is a whole other conversation. It's got
the difference.
The Muppets on it. I don't know. This is a conversation I had years ago where I think someone was like in their first year of philosophy, and they'd gotten this lecture from their teacher, which is basically about how to discuss the difference between a cup and a mug, and how that could lead to a whole philosophical conversation. And I was like, it's too early in the morning to sit and discuss.
Oh, God.
and what defines the pair. Well, you could do a zine about it. You could do a whole thing about that. But yeah,
You could.
I
There is probably a zine on it. If you just, I don't know, if you search around or send enough mail out, like a zine, a zine about cup versus mug or what's the difference is probably available.
likely available.
And that's what's cool about zines. Someone's made a zine about almost fucking anything.
They're a strange active encouragement into the world. I think it seems it's regardless of however you use them, whether you're using them for catharsis of just getting something out, whether you've got physical information you want to put into the world, or just like this is how the things work, or this is how things should work in your opinion. Yeah. I think they're an active little bit of a nudge for the general public and for others who are just like, look a little deeper. Pick at that scab once in a while. Why not?
Yeah. Like they're such a they can be so many different things, can't they? Like and before I said about veganism and straight edge, I used to go to you go to punk shows in the 90s, and when you go and see a straight edge band, it would be like like everyone had tables then, like tabling, like you'd have at a Zine Fest now, like bands that have their merch. Maybe you had merch, homemade T-shirt and some patches, and maybe at the straight edge shows there'd be like zines on veganism and animal cruelty and things like that, and they just, and then like Zine Fest, you could go to one and there would be a table like that, like a veganism table, and then the next table would be about a zine about tomatoes, and you just be like what the, like, how do these things connect? But yet the two zines would be chatting, just oh yeah. So what do like?
Yeah,
they're a weird vehicle.
They're a weird vehicle, but I think they're quite an important one. I think, like the longer I spend in the zine world, as it were, which I always say I accidentally fell into the zine world because I was never intending to make zines. It wasn't something I was really aware of until 2017. Like I knew of comic zines, but that's about as far as go. And to me, it was just comics. That's how you get comics. And I think the longer I spend in it, the more I learn about it, the goods, the bads, that's part of any community. I think the world we have now, zines are serving more and more of a purpose. They served their initial purpose of like a scream of this is what we're doing and we want to spread information, and that's how we spread information. And now we have information. We've got almost too much information, but they encourage now a creativity and a personality which information is now lacking because we have the internet. Yes.
Yeah, they're creating a connection also for two people to have, or you to have with somebody, or that person to have with many people. Because like you say, now we have all of the information online. Now we all have our own online personalities, or whether you're trying to or not, there's some kind of hue to your character online. And zines kind of just take that all away, and it kind of gives, I don't know, it's an undistracted moment that you can have in a connection, whatever the theme of that connection might be. But it's just, you don't have to scroll past. Just have a look at these couple of pages. I've just put a couple of pages together. Just flick through them, put your favorite music on, or sit in front of the heater, or grab a cup of tea, and just enjoy it. And it's a moment that people don't have anymore. Like, we don't sit down and, like, nobody reads the fucking newspaper anymore. Nobody, like, not many people pick up a book anymore. So it's, most zines probably do, but it's, I don't know, it's special moments now. It's kind of,
I think that's a very good point to round this out on. I think that's a wonderful message to push out into the world, Craig.
Oh, thank you.
Hopefully you've enjoyed chatting to me today, Craig. Hopefully it's not been
definitely. I've been a big fan. I've been a big fan of yours for I don't know, maybe I'd say a year, maybe it's longer, but yeah, I'm a fan of the show, both on YouTube and just in like my iTunes podcast thing.
You're my one listener in Japan. Then. When I look at my analytics, I'm like, who the hell is listening in Japan? It's great.
Yeah, that's me.
That's definitely you. Well, no, I appreciate that, man. I think it was when we tried to set this up and come to have a conversation. I think it was one of those ones of like, I feel like for a while I'd been thinking about asking you to come on, and I was like, you might be busy, you might have time, and obviously arranging time periods between time zones is a huge thing for especially for some people. I was like, okay, no, I'm happy. I think we've made some great points. That sounds more like therapy. We've made some great points today.
No, I'm very, very honored and flattered to be on here. I think it's I'm really, like I say, I'm a fan because I like the way you think, but not like I agree with everything you say, but like your style of thinking, like it's very different to mine, and I kind of really enjoy that, and I enjoy where you go with guests with the conversations. Like you'll start very general, and then 30 minutes in, you're kind of on this rocky path, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting stuff. And then even just your solo stuff, I enjoy them. Nice little bite-sized 20-minute stuff. I like that.
Before you know it, you're discussing tomatoes. And
someone's going to send me one day.
At the end of this, someone will make a tomato zine. Someone needs to reach out to Craig, send him a tomato zine to review, and blow his mind.
Just send me a message. I don't have a PO box. I don't think they do PO boxes here, so I just have to give my actual address out. So,
I mean, it's a long way to come to stalk you. It's a long ordeal.
Look, if someone tries to stalk me, I'm probably stalking them anyway. I'm probably
we've established this. On that note, we'll round this out, and we will talk to these guys later.